PGA Nation, we are back. We are back with another fun week of golf. Now, it's a weird week because, it's our typical, or what I like to call a JV tournament. Not a ton of the big names are going to be teeing off with this week. And it's also kind of the end of the road before there's a little bit of a break and there's some tournaments later on. So you want to play because it's fun and we love golf and that's why you listen to our show. But it's not the most thrilling tournament. Sia, if he was here tonight, unfortunately Sia couldn't make it tonight. He'd be complaining about the context selection because it's piss poor. We get it, but we're still going to give you all the best picks like we do every week. And just a little reminder, maybe we hit another first round leaderways night last week. Maybe another outright from David as well. David, you start with this. How do you guys keep doing it?
Well, I think I wake up in the morning, and I do a meditation. That usually that starts my day, and then I look myself in the eyes in the mirror directly. Usually I'm just wearing a towel at this point, and I tell myself just what a great day I'm going to have, and that's really the key. That's the key. I mean, you do that, you're off to a winning start already. No, it's been a great year, Joel. It's been awesome. 17th outright for the year. Not only did we have Tony Finau as a headline pick, we had Alex Noren as well. So he finished in the top 5. #BudgetGate. Obviously didn't get drafted onto my team due to some budgeting issues, but he was in the tips and the outright picks as well. So and then in terms of the draft, I drafted Joseph Bramlett, who was 6.5K. And finished in 9th. So that was a great performance from him and some massive value. So just delivering, man. Just delivering. That's what we do on Win Daily.
Process sounds foolproof. Thanks, David. Spence, how you doing tonight?
I do a very similar thing as David, just towel removed in this equation. But tell myself what a great day it's going to be. But no, it was all jokes aside of that. It was another good tournament. Unfortunately, I didn't get my three-peat. I lost by, I believe, 4.5 points to David on this show. Tony Finau was a little bit too much for me to overcome. But, anytime that you have an outright that's hit and then a first-round leader that I hit in Aaron Wise, I don't know what more you can want from a show than that. So we're doing the right stuff at Win Daily. The picks are coming through. I think all the lineups last week, for the most part, were really successful. We talked about a lot of players that were in contention. There was a lot of those guys near the top of the leaderboard that we mentioned on this show. And I mean, that's what we try to do here. We try to provide as much upside as we possibly can with the boards when we run through them, and as much information as everybody can take in listening to it. So that's always the goal at the end of the day.
And, we did, of course, hit another first round leader. So there has been some speculation that we're going to change our name to the First Round Leader Cast. It's possible still. We said if we hit 2 first-round leaders in every tournament for the remainder of 2023, we're changing the name to the First Round Leader Cast. So, I mean, we're going to hit 1 every tournament. That's a lock, but we'll get 2.
Well, let me add one thing to that really quickly. So I think the PGA Tour might be trying to drown us out this week. And, we'll see. And I don't know if numbers are up at this point, but it's a split rotational event, which we'll talk a little bit more about. That means that half your guys are going to go off on one course on Thursday. The other ones are going to go off on the other one. They'll rotate that on Friday until everybody will come back on Sea Island on Saturday and Sunday. But that makes a really difficult first-round leaderboard. And I have seen a market out there, which I don't know how many people have access to it, that have put everybody together. And I think at the end of the day, you would want the Plantation course because it's a par 72. You're going to be able to play 4 par 5s. But I also don't know how doable that's going to be because, and maybe you guys can correct me here. The last I've looked, DraftKings and FanDuel haven't posted first-round leader numbers, at least as of 2 hours ago here. So I don't know if that's changed. And when they do, I would anticipate that we get a split rotational event where half will be on one course, half will be on the other, and you'll have to bet it that way with it. But at least keep that in mind if you have a book that might be a little bit slow to react or isn't aware of what's going on. The Plantation course, in my mind, is where you would want to be for first-round leader. And unfortunately, I don't know if that's going to necessarily help us this week because I don't know how much we can dive into the information. But Just wanted to throw that out there before we actually got into the show this week.
Yeah, that's really good info. I am not seeing the lines up for first-round leaders on DraftKings yet. I do think they'll be out tomorrow, so I do think we'll get them. You'll be able to make those bets. We probably won't be able to provide them for you tonight, but of course, $5.99. Check back in, sign up for Win Daily, get on Discord. We'll give you the plays. You'll still be able to get them. But I do remember last year in tournaments where Lakers had started on different courses. They usually, the way Spencer said it is correct. They usually will give you the first leader from each course. So what that does is two things. It probably raises your probability of being able to hit it a little bit, but reduces the odds for each winner because it's a smaller pool. To us, we're going to hit anyway because we always hit. So I'd rather have the increased odds, but we'll still have fun with it either way. Before we dive into the draft tonight, Spence, can you enlighten us? What is you looking for on the course this week?
Yeah, so Sea Island was designed in 1928 by Harry Colt and C.H. Allison, but did undergo some restorations from Tom Fazio in 1998. As I always note, the main takeaway from a Fazio design will be the extreme undulation that can be found throughout. But this isn't your prototypical setup from a contextual standpoint that you always get from him. Fazio kept most of the link-style quirks from the original layout, and we see that with fairways that are easy to hit, but will be a necessity to locate since the field connects on 80% of their greens in regulation when hitting their approach shots from the fairway. That's a total that ranks as highly as any course on tour that I run my model for, but I don't want to overcomplicate that explanation since the width of the fairways average 7.2 yards wider than your standard setup. All of that's really basic from an expectation standpoint. You're going to want guys that hit fairways. You're going to want guys that can putt. You need guys that can scramble. But the one notable difference that I just alluded to that I want to elaborate just a second time is from a game theory perspective, and maybe this is something that we might want to look into for, round 1 and round 2 contests, is the Thursday and Friday rounds will be rotating between Sea Island and the Plantation course. That adds a more challenging wrinkle to handicap statistically since rotational events change what is being asked from the field between days. And we see that by looking at the par 70 versus par 72 difference, where the one-off performance will feature 4 par 5s. In fairness, that's likely the one noticeable variation since there are at least some similarities in green size and grass type, but I didn't overweight my model based off of that. When you have 75% of the rounds at one venue and the critical weekend rounds taking place there, I don't want to overcomplicate the process by saying, well, this 25% on either Thursday or Friday makes up a ton. Like, sure, if you want to put a little bit into par 5 scoring, I can live with that, but I just wouldn't make too many differences based off of that. The last thing is wind can play a factor. That's one of the reasons I graded into my model. And then we have an eye-popping 9 par 4s that measure between 400 to 450 yards. I'll call it 10 for the sake of my research since one is just outside at 452, but that's going to give you the extra consolidated emphasis on approach metrics from 125 to 175. That produces an 8.5% increase. And then the one other difference that is at least something that's substantial, which turns this into a putting contest, is 8.3% more putts get made from 10 feet and beyond than we're accustomed to on tour. That's going to be troublesome when building models because that does put us into that range of, as I said, a putting contest. I don't necessarily love that, but, it's something that we're going to have to get around at the end of the day with it. And I do think that there's ways that you can put putting into a model. I put weighted proximity and weighted putting. Give me guys that are going to put it into the ranges that I'm looking for and guys that are more likely to make the putts. That gives you a really unique skill set that's needed this week. But you can check out my model to kind of see where those guys rank based off of that.
There you have it. Listen back. That is the critical information to get an edge each week. But without further ado, we're going to take our knowledge and we're going to head it over to the draft. We came a little bit unprepared this week as we don't have the draft order yet. So I'm going to go ahead and give Spence. Do you know who won last week?
David beat me. He just eclipsed me by about 4.5 points. So David was the winner last week.
All right. David, will you go ahead and pick a quick order for the draft today?
So I'm going to take the first pick. And then obviously I'll put Spencer in that second slot. So what that means is that when I do my double draft, I'll steal at least one of Spencer's picks.
Of course.
Then we'll put the audience in third and Joel will put you in fourth. So you get the double pick at the end.
All right. There's the order.
And also shout out Byron. Thank you for calling out Spence, I'll point out that I'm not a nudist. I was wearing a towel. Spence was the one who mentioned dropping the towel. So thanks, Byron. Good to have you here as always, and good to have Brent here as well.
Audience, I have a feeling you guys are coming in for a win. It feels like the audience is due for a hot week. This might be it. Byron looks like he's in the chat ready to go. Get your nominations in quick. You're picking third, so it'll be pretty rapid. As a reminder, it takes 2 nominations from the audience, a first and a second, for your pick to go through. Snake style, as always. I will go ahead and pull the draft board up now. David, you are on the clock.
I am. Just before we get into that, what I mentioned as well is that we've been used to giving out outright plays on this show and first round leader plays. Obviously, first round leaders, we're still waiting for those markers to come out, so we can't give that out today. With our outrights, what we want you to do is jump onto our Twitter feed at WINDAILY Sports, retweet the link to this video. If we get to 20 retweets, we will give out those outrights at the end of the play. As you know, we've been hitting in a massive way with those. I've hit 17 outrights for 2022. And FanDuel again last week. So we can get to 20 retweets, jump onto WINDAILY Sports, retweet that link, and we'll give them out on the show. Otherwise, they'll be in the WINDAILY Discord from all of us at the end of the show. So one of the reasons, other than stealing Spencer's picks, is I am going to take Spencer's favorite golfer in the whole entire world with the number 1 pick. He's back, ladies and gentlemen. It is Jason Day.
Jason Day, I like it. I mean, obviously we know how Spence feels about the pick, but Spence, go ahead.
Well, I put it in all capital letters if you noticed there. That's how excited I am. And I'll say this, it was worth it losing the contest last week to see Jason Day go number 1. So congratulations on winning, David. We can end this draft. We can move on after 16 minutes of this show. But the one concern I have about Jason Day, and there's only one thing I have that I would mention this week. Sea Island is very cold. Let's hope that the back holds up. If it holds up, this is probably the best opportunity that he's had to win a golf tournament. And I know we've been coming on and saying we like him most of these weeks, but you could make a strong argument that he could be the deserving favorite to be on top of the board at this point. So I like Jason Day from a metric standpoint. I think that everything makes sense. We see it coming in the right direction with all these top 25 finishes that he's producing over and over again. And it's going to be a little painful because I don't have an outright on him this week. This is like the 1 week that I've missed, but it's hard to say much negative about him.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I'll add is that he's coming in off 9 straight tournaments of gaining on approach. So, look, I understand the fears there and that he has had some difficulties with injuries over the years, but I think it's fair to say, I mean, just given the performances that he's kind of touting out week in, week out, that those concerns for me have been minimized quite a bit. Look, he does feel that his metrics are certainly trending in the direction of a golfer who's due for a win. He's got a great record around here as well, so it's an easy pick. And great to have the towel banter. Tailgate obviously is a hit with the audience.
While Spence has fun with changing Jason Day's name, Spence, you are also now on the clock.
I didn't know exactly how I wanted to approach this week, so there's a lot of players that I really like. I'm going to go with a golfer that I think I have said more negative things about than almost any player. I mean, almost every single week I say I don't want to play him. He's overpriced. I don't want anything to do with him. I'm going to take him this weekend. I've seen a reduction in ownership take place over these last couple of days. He was really hot on Monday. I was seeing him as one of the most highest owned players. He was more in like the 20% range. I see 11.5% now. 2 top 10s in this venue over his past 3 appearances. But I think this might be the best chance Denny McCarthy has ever had to win a golf tournament. I'm going to trust my model here above anything else. So when I ran that recalculated data for weighted proximity and weighted putting into the mix, it loved him this week. So like the shorter ranges propelled him up. We know that the putter's good. He's the only player in my model to rank in the top 30 of every category I attached a weight to this week. And, at the end of the day, if you're telling me he's going to be 11% and I'm seeing upside that there's weeks where he's like 17% owned, and I think he has no upside. And now this week, I actually think he has upside, and he's like 11% owned. So I'm going to trust my model here. Maybe there's a little bit more volatility than usual. At least my model kind of thinks that from a trajectory standpoint. But I don't know. I mean, number one, when it comes to upside, that meant something to me. So I'll take McCarthy at 9,100.
There you have it. I like Denny this week. I think he is playing well, but in fairness, I always like Denny, so I guess my opinion probably won't count as much. Audience, you are on the clock. Tonight, you don't have your CS support card, so we are going to need you guys to be fully engaged and on it. Get your nominations in quick. We don't have one in, so we really are going to need you guys moving. Oh, no, we do have a couple in. So there's Montgomery and Hughes. And while we wait for everyone else to chime in,
I'm going to take. Can we take Byron's comment there, the full Monty, as seconding Taylor Montgomery? Byron, can you clarify? Is that a second on Taylor Montgomery?
All right,
Yes.
we'll do it. The Taylor Montgomery, it is. I don't mind that pick. Listen, at the end of the day, I think you have to accept the fact this is a JV tournament, and so Taylor Montgomery actually is one of the more premier players in the talent pool that's going to be going out this week. 90% of the time, Taylor Montgomery 9,600 is a fade for sure, but this week he's probably priced appropriately. Spence, what do you think about that pick?
I like the leverage that he creates. I mean, you kind of alluded to it, Joel. Like, this isn't the most high-end board. There are players I like more than him. But I'll tell you. So I have one player $8,000 and up that technically has better leverage on the board than Taylor Montgomery does. And anytime that you can talk about leverage in GPP contests, I'm okay with the play. I have negative trajectory for upside. That worries me when he's $9,600, but it's one of those things that we always talk about. Is the reduction in ownership worth what the price tag increase has become? To me, I don't know if the answer is yes to that, because I think there's other places I would rather go, but he's a player that no matter how I run my model, he's inside the top 11 in every iteration. And unfortunately, that's a guy who's priced fourth on DraftKings right now, so you're going to need more than that. But, I mean, it's hard to come on here and say Taylor Montgomery is not a good play when he is less than 10% owned. There is upside to be had.
I love it. How about you, David? What do you think about that pick?
Yeah, I think where it does give that leverage is because everyone, this historically has been a course where there is a bit of a premium on driving accuracy. And so I think there is going to be a tendency to move away from some of those longer drivers who aren't as accurate like Taylor Montgomery. The only caveat I would put on that is that at a course like this, these guys do club down, and they do club down quite a bit. And overall, the driving accuracy is going to be higher than at other courses. So if that means that everyone in the community is avoiding someone like Taylor Montgomery, who historically is an incredibly good putter, there could be some great leverage there.
I love it. Audience, start thinking about your nominations because my two picks are going to be quick. I am locked in. My first pick is going to be Davis Riley. I think I'm just getting way too good a price tag on Davis Riley here. In this field, I would have had him in the high 9K range. I wouldn't even mind him priced anywhere up there. So a lot of my strategy for this week is I don't think there is a huge difference between, the top of the field going down to the 8K. Go get your guys. You don't have to feel like I need to do stars and scrub. There's no such thing as stars and scrub. There are no stars in this tournament. So you can play who you want, and my way of doing that is just going out there being balanced. I don't want to dive too low if I don't have to this week. So with Davis Riley, he's a great piece at 8K, who I think has plenty of upside. His ball striking has been as good as he was in his kind of heater that he's been on. And then I'm going to go with my second pick, another guy who's just been red hot, who in this field again, I think his upside. In a regular tournament with all our players, doesn't have the upside. He's more of a cash play for me. But I think this week he does have some upside. in this type of JV field, and that's Patrick Rogers, who he's on just a heater. I mean, in the last few weeks, in the last 5 tournaments that he's played in, he's got all top 30s in a row with a tie for third. Granted, that was in Bermuda, but he also had a top 20 last week in Houston, a top 20 at the Zozo. He's just playing really good golf, and he's another guy that you're getting at a really strong price tag here, at less than $9K.
Yeah, what I'd say with Rogers is that, I mean, obviously since Finau's withdrawn, that's all a lot of these books were scrambling to readjust all the pricing down, obviously, given he was a single figure favorite. What I'd say with Rogers is that he's been cut quite substantially further than the other players around him. Like, I mean, he was sort of in the 15-60 kind of range. They have taken him right down to like the 30, 35 kind of mark. So that suggests to me that there's been quite a bit of money coming his way too.
That's always a good thing. Love that. Audience, I don't think you guys get enough credit. First I want to take a minute just to say great job with the speed of getting your pick in without Sia's help, super quickly. And you know what? Not only did you get it in quickly, it was a good pick. It was someone I was considering with my pick. He's been playing great. His recent form is there. You're getting him at a good price here at under 9K. He's another one of those guys that fits the same mold as my 2 picks, right? He could have been in the 9K range in this tournament. You're getting the discount. He has just as much upside. I really like the pick here. Spence, any thoughts?
I'm indifferent to it. I don't dislike it. I mean, he's not the first player I'm running to. The one thing that I agree with, Joel, is that if you would have told me that he switched price with somebody in the $9,000 range, we don't need to cherry pick somebody out of that group. But if he switched the price with somebody there and he was, 9,300, let's say, I could see that. Like, I worried a little bit that he was so bad at that tournament last week when it came to his ball striking metrics. I kept writing about it every single day, and he beat me. He beat me pre-tournament. He beat me round 1. He beat me round 2. He beat me round 3. Finally got there on Sunday where I got a win against him. But I kept watching these performances from him where he's gaining 3 shots with his short game. He's losing strokes when it comes to the critical ball striking metrics, and he's shooting himself into the top 10 of the leaderboard because he's chipping everything in and making every single putt. That would be my one concern, that finish last week he probably shouldn't have made the cut at the end of the day with it. So, I mean, that's the only thing I would say about it. I don't dislike it because I think this is a prototypical setup that you would want for him when it comes to like putting at the end of the day. I like the ownership that he brings more than anything because I do think there's some safety in the play if you're going to talk about a golfer that's, around 10%. I mean, there's a lot of players that are vastly higher than him on the board, but I don't know. I mean, he's 22nd in my model. He's 18th for safety. That's not a guy that I'm saying like, oh, you need to fade him. It's just at 8,600, it's very kind of in the middle of where I want to be.
I would just add this. You are a Mackenzie Hughes hater.
Always
hate Mackenzie Hughes. And in a tournament like this, there is something to the fact that, he can get red piping hot with that putter, which gives you winning upside. So I really like him. But I think your point is fair in that he's not an elite ball striker, which makes him very risky as well.
Well, I'm like notoriously the biggest Denny McCarthy, Mackenzie Hughes. I would say those are the 2 players. So for Hughes to grade 22nd for me, that's like as high as he's ever been before. And it kind of goes to your point that you just said. Look at what he's done at this venue in his career. Or let's just look at the last 2 years. 2nd place finish, miscut. I think there's a lot to be said about if the putter gets hot, he can obviously find success here. If the ball striking goes south, he can miss the cut. So it's just what version do you expect?
Fair. That is fair. All right, Spence, you're on the clock.
All right. I am going to try to save some salary here, even though I'm not going that low on the board, with a golfer that is going to be very popular. I see him as the 4th highest in ownership projection right now. I think I can get away with this when I take McCarthy. That is, 11%. This is a golfer who's about 15%, but I'm going to take Andrew Putnam at 7,900. And Putnam's been brilliant with 11 straight made cuts. He's top 15 when I look at weighted putting plus weighted proximity. He's also inside the top 15 for strokes gained total on easy, short, and Bermuda courses. That was a group that landed into a very select range. There was only so many players. There was like 6 of them. I don't want to, let me see if there's anybody that's landed there that's been picked. So McCarthy was one of them. Putnam was one of them. Taylor Montgomery was one of them. If you want to look at the positives there, I guess. I mean, that's at least a reason to be encouraged there. But I really like Putnam's combination of safety and upside here. He's second in my model. So McCarthy was 1 when Finau got removed. Putnam was 2 when I ran this for upside. That's about as like different of a board as I ever get. And I think it's because I added so much putting to the mix here that I kind of created one of those wonky boards that I don't normally do. But I think it's the right way to build this tournament this week. So I really like Andrew Putnam's price tag. I think he could have been in the 9,000s. Like we can throw him into that mix.
Fair. It's almost like, one of the suggestions I think for building this week is build your own tiers, like price agnostic, because pricing was hard this week with how this field was built. And so you can put a lot of these guys that maybe weren't priced in the 9Ks in your elite or 9K tier and enable you to kind of build that way, knowing even though your guys, you can overvalue guys at a lower price tag because of the way this field is constructed. David, you got back-to-back here. Who are you looking at?
So, I mean, first thing I'll say is that I've completely shot myself in the foot playing Spencer in second because Andrew Putnam was one of my players coming up. So I guess that's karma. That's karma. That's what happens. You try and target a threat, and he comes back and bites you. So, yep, I love the Andrew Putnam play. Congratulations, Spencer. So first pick I'm going to take is Matthew Naismith. Look, I just love the game that we've seen from him lately. One thing that not many people are going to be diving into is his amateur record here. So he held the record for 54 holes at the SEC Championship. He was 14 under and was like quite a far way ahead of the rest of the pack around this course. So he's got some good history and good memories here. If he's ever going to break through with a win, this seems like a great spot to do it. Several May cuts in a row. Obviously, the 53rd last week, we need to dive into a little bit more because the majority of those strokes were lost again during one round, which, anytime I can get that, for me, that creates a little bit of leverage because people often just see the result and they don't actually dive into the information that's behind it. So I'm happy to take him there. And then with my second pick, I'm going to go one of my favorite plays on the board, which is JJ Spawn. So I'm seeing like quite a difference in terms of the way he's priced in fantasy compared to the way the markets are treating him. We've seen previously on these courses where like the RSM Classic puts an emphasis on driving accuracy, even though it has quite wide fairways, because if you miss the fairways, you end up in water or you end up in kind of marsh, kind of swampland. So the penalty for missing fairways is significant, and that's kind of similar to what we saw at the Valero Texas. The other thing I'd say with Texas is you've got the wind correlation to here as well, which it is an exposed course. You do get played in the wind, and obviously JJ Spawn was able to get his victory there. He's got a decent history here as well, so he holds the second place here from 2018, and then 16th on his last appearance in 2022. He's also got a 6th place at the RBC Heritage in Harbour Town, so just a very good comp course for this track here.
All right, there you have it. 2 solid picks there. We'll keep the draft moving here. Spence, who are you looking at here with your third pick?
I'll say this just very quickly. I like both of those picks from David. That kind of shrinks the board down on me, depending on which route I go here, because this can really condense in quickly. So there are 2 golfers that I'm deciding between, and I'd like to get both of them, but I don't know if I'm going to. I'm kind of afraid that I'm going to lose one here. So it comes down to which one would I rather have. I guess I'm going to go with, well, let me not say exactly what I'm going with because I don't want to give away who the other one is, but I guess I'm going to go with Brendan Todd at 8,000. I really like Todd's metrics, and it's kind of, I keep going back to the same thing of looking for weighted proximity plus weighted putting. We know that Todd at his core is an amazing putter. He's an amazing Bermuda putter. If you're telling me, at least what my model is telling me here, is that there is an upside that I can find when I look for weighted proximity for this venue, And that's not something I normally see from Brendan Todd, because you don't necessarily think irons for Brendan Todd and think he can find success. But, he's inside like the top 40 for me when I run weighted proximity. And that's for a golfer that's usually outside the top 100. So that's a big noticeable difference at this point, when I think that I know he's going to make putts. I know he's going to be accurate off the tee. If the irons can just be somewhat decent, I think that the form is trending. The Bermuda putting's the magnificent for the profile. And then the weighted proximity and total driving, when I run it specifically for this track, does put him inside the top 5 of a lot of iterations of my model this week.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Todd was the one I just wrote down, like right before you picked him. So I was teeing up for my next pick. I like Todd. I also think he just makes a lot of sense on this course. He's playing well. I think the type of tournament you'll see Todd succeed at is a JV type tournament where the field's a little watered down, which allows him to rise up a little bit. So I think for a lot of reasons, I can get behind that pick.
I'm just afraid now. Like, I don't think the next player is making it back to me. I guess there's 2 players that I need to make it back to me, and I don't think they're going to. So it was kind of like addition by subtraction at the end of the day, because I'm going to lose out on who I need, and then that really convolutes this board moving forward.
I'm certainly going to do my best to make sure they don't get back to you. So, audience, help me out. Who are we taking to steal from? Spencer, you got to get 2 nominations in. It looks like
we've got Davis Thompson.
Is there 2? Is there 2? DT, I think that counts. I think it counts. All right, Thompson it is. David, what do you think about that pick?
Yeah, I think he's got some decent upside. Look, anytime that Spilardi's back in the play, that's always a good credentials, because him and his team are incredibly sharp. For those who don't know, Stephen or Spilardi is one of the WINDAILY team. He does our projection models as well, and he's pretty sharp. I'm liking the approach games that I'm seeing from Davis Thompson. I mean, he has played here several times. He has missed the last 2 cuts, but I mean, as Brent's mentioned in the chat, is a very good point, is that this can be a really volatile tournament. It is a case of where if you do miss the fairway, you can be in trouble and you have to take penalty strokes. It is also subject to the wind. It can just simply be when you get on the course, were you on the course at the right time? So I wouldn't read too much into that, but I do like to look at his approach metrics, and he is very accurate and along with the driver as well. So particularly when he's playing that plantation course with the additional par 5s, hopefully he can get some scoring done then.
There you have it. I like it. I like the pick. Spence, you have any thoughts on that pick as well?
I'm probably indifferent on him just because of ownership at the end of the day. Like, I'm seeing 8 to 10% every single time that I update it. I liked him last week. I had him as a top 40 bet at plus 150. It ended up missing by 1 shot to landing. I don't know. I mean, he's not the first player that I'm rushing into my builds, but if you look at what he's done recently, 9th at the Fortinet, 12th at the Shriners, 43rd at the Houston Open. It's enough of a reason to at least think that you have some safety built into the mix. And like David said, I don't necessarily think there's a lack of upside. I just don't know that I love the 8 to 10% range if I'm looking at this right now, that makes him, I guess, the 2nd or 3rd highest priced player, like sub, $8,000 at this point. Like, that's at least a noticeable number.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I think probably I would highlight ownership. For me, I would prioritize ownership more this week, because I feel like the players are more evenly distributed in talent. I feel like there's a lot more coin flip options to go after, where if you can feel like you can find an edge from the ownership side between 2 or 3 guys, I probably would defer to the lower owned more so this week than most.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and start with my first pick. I'm going to take my namesake in Joel Dahmen. I love his current form. Joel Dahmen is on a hot streak, and he's another one of these guys that even at 9,200, listen, I have plenty of money to afford him. The ownership is a little high for what I like for him, but it's not overwhelming. I'm happy with taking what I'm looking at, about 12 to 13%. And then coming in, he's coming off 2 top 10s in a row, a tied for 16th at the Zozo. He's really, in the last 5 tournaments, played really well, really consistent. His ball striking has been pretty elite. This looks like a really good spot for him to compete, get another top 10, really stay toward the top of the board, especially I think in this weak field. He's one of the talent risers for sure in terms of win equity. And I'm going to also pair him with who should I go? I'll go with Segala. In terms of long-term potential and what we get, Segala might be the best golfer in this game. Is he playing that way right now? Probably not, but he's not playing poorly. I don't think I'm not taking a guy that's not in form and hoping he comes through. He's playing, pretty well. Tied for 22nd at the Houston. He had a 5th at the Zozo, a 6th at the Fortinet. The talent is there. We just, the concern with him is that he can be a little wild with the driver, which is not what you want here on this course. So that is what I'm rolling the dice on. But if he can find keeping that driver straight and where he wants to play it, I think he can compete to win the tournament as well.
I like the 4% ownership that I'm seeing on Theegala. Like, he's a boom or bust candidate, but it's kind of like a very similar mentality that I was talking about. Maybe a little bit different because I think Taylor Montgomery is going to be safer, but it's like the reduction in ownership at what point, because I'll put it this way. My model thinks that his volatility is concerning. But at what point, and that's I think anybody would say that. I know recently we've seen a little bit more consistency from him, but at what point does that volatility from at least the perception of the public become so overweighted that now you have a 4% golfer, which, as Joel just said, I mean, Theegala could be the best player in the world, or not, maybe not in the world, but in this tournament, if we look back on this in 5 years, and you're like, yeah, well, Theegala should have been $11,000. Like, he became that sort of player here. So I think it's a boom or bust play. I think you need to be aware of that when you select them, but that's what you want in GPP contests. You win lineups based off of decisions like that.
Exactly. That's and like Spence said, I wouldn't be rushing to play Theegala in a cash game or anything like that. But for our GPP, for the big hitter at that low ownership, he certainly does have that upside. All right, audience. I love your work. Your nominations are coming in. I don't see a second yet, but keep them coming. A few names that have already been mentioned are guys that I like a lot. I am hesitating to even mention them because I don't want them to get off the board because maybe they'll come back to me. But I think the recommendations so far look good. But we do need to get that final pick in. So we need a second. While we're waiting for the audience to get that final pick in, David, any thoughts on Theegala this week?
I mean, I'm pretty shocked at that 4% number. If that's what it ends up being, I think that is some massive leverage. I mean, as you guys mentioned, he is a boom or bust play, absolutely. But I love the trend that I'm seeing with his approach numbers. Just diving into that at the moment, that looks decent. That he gained more strokes on approach in his last outing. That's always a good sign that the ball striking is trending in the right direction. Look, he's absolutely like a GPP play only. I wouldn't be playing him in any single entry. I wouldn't be playing him in any cash game whatsoever. I'd just be playing him in some of those bigger tournaments because at 4%, he absolutely has the ability to win. I mean, he could come out and just stripe this field. So, yeah, I like the play from that perspective, absolutely.
I love it. And great job, audience. Way to get your pick in. Scott Stallings. I like this pick here from you guys. Again, I think in this tournament, I think you're getting an underpriced golfer. I don't think he's coming in the best form. I mean, in fact, rewind 2 to 3 months, he was really hot playing some of the best golf of his career. He's come back to earth a little bit, but we're not far removed from that time where he was red hot. You're getting him at 7,600, and there's certainly an upside that he has in this field. David, what do you think about this pick?
Yeah, look, I don't know if I'm going to get there on Stallings this week. Again, the driving accuracy just worries me a little bit lately. That would be my concern, and his approach numbers dropped on his last appearance as well. Look, I mean, to be fair, that was at Congaree, and that is the kind of course where that can happen. And I think he has got some good upside. I think he's an extremely talented golfer. I like the long-term prospect of Stallings. I just don't know if this is going to be the week that I'm necessarily playing.
Fair enough. Spence, you are back on the clock. Did you get the guy you were hoping for?
So I'm going to say this. Everybody is still on the board currently, and now it's playing a game to try to figure out how David doesn't steal my pick. which I assume is going to happen at this point. We are at least good for it once a show where a pick gets straight jack for me. And I will say every single pick that David has made so far is on a short list of options if I had to deviate away from the route that I was going to take. But unfortunately, those players are off the board now if I do need to veer in that direction. So I'm going to have to be precise with this play. I'm going to have to make the right decision. And here's the problem with this show. Here's the one thing I will say. When I make this pick here, it's going to lock me in to where my salary is now stuck at that number. So if David does end up stealing a player from me, it just throws everything into a loophole because now it's like I can't just say I'm just kidding, and I'll tell you who I'm taking. I'm gonna take Matt Kuchar at 8,900. And I don't think that's necessarily the player that David was going to take, but I can't now say, okay, I don't want Matt Kuchar anymore because I need to rebuild this lineup in a different route, and that's the problem that comes into play here. But I really like Kuchar's numbers. Like we've seen him this season, he's turned stuff around. He has 2 top 37s at this course in the past 2 years. That's not anything to write home about necessarily, but pretty much no matter how I run my model, he's inside the top 10 in all iterations for it. And when I run it for safety, it really likes the potential that he brings to the table. So if you're telling me that I have a golfer that's 7.9%, I'm not necessarily looking for safety. It's like the opposite of the Thagala thing here. But if you're telling me he's 7.9% and it thinks his upside is a top 10, 15 type play, and it thinks his safety propels him into like a top 5 to 10 play, I think there's a lot to like about him because there is a built-in floor. There's an upside that it likes, and there's a percentage of ownership to where, it's kind of massively boosting in my model when it comes to leverage. So I'm going to take Kuchar. That might end up biting me because I'm kind of afraid that that's not where he was going to go, and now he's going to steal my pick. But I'll let you do it now, David.
No, Spence. That was where I was going to go. That was exactly where I was going to go. Absolutely. So that's great. That's great. I've done well picking the draft order this week, and do you know what? As I said, this is karma. This is just retribution for me constantly stealing Spencer's picks for the last few weeks, and that he's now taken both Putnam and Kuchar for me. I have a $100 head-to-head with Rick Gaiman in play this week, which is I have Matt Kuchar, he has Mackenzie Hughes, and miscuts and ties, no blood drawn. So I like him enough to put my money where my mouth is and go head-to-head with Rick Gaiman on this one. So
I love that wager.
Congratulations. Yeah, I do too. It's an absolute lock. So Rick, don't make me come all the way back to Vegas to collect from you when I win that one. Okay, well, my next 2 picks then, I'm going to take, I know one of the guys I was going to take anyway, which was Russell Knox. So Russell Knox gained just a ton of strokes on approach in his last outing, and he's also gained in a big way on accuracy in both of his last 2 tournaments. He's got a really good record here. He's got a really good record at the RBC Heritage as well, so that's a direct correlation to this course. RBC Heritage is basically your go-to as a comp course to here. What I like with Knox, he really has so few opportunities on tour every year where he can win, and this is one of the few where the distance isn't so penal that he just can't compete whatsoever. So it is one of those opportunities that that this is the sort of tournament that he targets. He's an incredible wind player as well. He's very, very good in the wind. His best performances do come when it's windy and it gets a bit tougher. His approach play and his accuracy is what we're going to need to perform this week. So I'm going to take that one. And then with my next pick, how much salary has Spence got left? What have we got? Is it 8,050, is it?
Mm-hmm. Let
me just have a little think about who that may be. I think I'm gonna go with who I think I know who it might be. Okay. Just out of spite, just out of pure spite, I wouldn't have taken this player, but I'm going to do it because I think this is who Spence is going to take, and that's just fun. Kevin Kisner. I'm going to take Kevin Kisner at 8,300.
Yeah, it was Kevin Kisner.
There you go. What I will say with Kevin Kisner, I do like how he profiles this week. I'll see if Spence can find out my other name, who I was considering on the way back. But Kevin Kisner, look, I love the way that he has really lifted his game, elevated his game as of late. Obviously, we saw him perform very well throughout the playoffs, particularly. So coming into a weaker field, I like that here. I like the way he profiles in terms of he's got that sort of short game in terms of chipping, putting that can really put a score together. And he's an accurate driver, kind of a similar mold to Russell Knox as well, where this is the kind of tournament where distance off the tee is not going to be as penal.
So I don't think that this ruins the draft by saying this, because I'm going to name a player that hasn't been taken yet. I mean, unless you guys would prefer me not to name a player that, and I'm not selecting this as my pick, but unless you guys tell me not to name this player, I won't.
Do it.
Okay, so how I wanted to go with this route here is I think it was a really savvy way. Kevin Kisner, Harris English. I think Harris English is trending in a positive way right now. I think the iron play is turning around. I thought that was a really unique way to end a build to where, Kisner has no ownership to him right now, virtually in comparison. And even Harris English, it's like 7.9%. I think you're able to create leverage in that sense. But I am going to pivot, and I'm fortunate in this sense that there was like 3 or 4 players that I liked. And when Kuchar fell back to me, it allowed me to either go Kuchar and Kisner or Kuchar and a player that, unfortunately at this point, I wish that the name that I could tell you right now would be Jason Day. I wish he was still on the board. This is where like the draft works in opposite ways to where like I can't make that my play. I'm going to take a golfer that does have some volatility. He does have a bit of ownership right now that worries me ever so slightly, but with the way that this board is played out, I'm going to take Keith Mitchell at 9,300. 2 top 14 finishes at this course over the past 3 years. We saw a 9th from him last weekend. We know that the total driving, any single time we look at total driving for him, he's one of the best total drivers in the field. And I actually think his win equity is higher. So here's the best way to say it. It's like when his number, and I did not bet him as an outright bet, but when his number came out, he was the very first guy I wanted to bet. And unfortunately, markets priced him at about 35-1. And then the removal of Finau has pushed him down into like the 22-1 range. I don't think those prices are necessarily like where I want to get this week, but I understand it from an upside perspective because my model seems to be agreeing like Keith Mitchell can compete. Keith Mitchell can make a run at this if he gets hot in certain aspects of his game. Bermuda is always a big increase for him. So at least with taking Mitchell here, I'm going to be able to leave a bunch of salary on the bottom end. But I know it's only 6,800, but like there's a bunch of players there that I can name. There's one that I prefer over anybody else. But I think that this is the safest way that I can just build the lineup, take my guy at the top and kind of just call it a day up there and then figure out who's at the bottom when it comes back to me.
Well, I do like the pick. I do think there's upside. Questioning the dumpster dive strategy of we'll just pray that something comes back to you, but we'll see. You do tend to find those diamonds in the rough from week to week. Audience, don't forget you are on the clock. We're going to need 2. So nice of you, Sia, to take some time out of the hockey game that you're at to join us. We miss you tonight as always, but thanks for stopping by.
And that's the sort of dedication you can expect from the Win Daily team, that even when we're at a live NHL game, we are still tuning into the DraftCast to help you out. You're welcome, world. That
is true. Sia never misses a show. He's always getting involved with the chat. But unfortunately, Sia, you picked the wrong 2 teams, as the winner is going to be my team this week, of course.
I've got David at the Golden Knights game, so here we go. Everyone, the entire community is at the NHL today.
A lot of hockey tonight, so that's good. You know what? You can.
Jack, are we going to take that?
Rose Gate on this if you want, but I don't care. You're taking Justin Rose because the lack of nominations and other options is run out. So Justin Rose is, I think, I'm okay with Justin Rose pick. I mean, he's certainly talented. It's a wild card pick. I probably would reserve him for GPPs and bigger tournaments, but I do think he has some upside. He can get you a top 10 if he puts it all together this week. Spence, what do you think about the Rose pick?
I think you kind of – I don't want to go over the same thing that you just said. I think you summarized it very well. he's a player that my model likes from an upside perspective. It worries about his safety. I think he makes a lot of sense in GPP contests. I think he's a player in the first round leader market that I would be considering, like specifically. And he's a play that if you have access to like every single name available at both courses and they're just like grading it as they're at the same course, essentially, I think Rose at the number was, I saw 60-1 to be first round leader. I thought that was a very intriguing price just because I really like his upside this week, but I have absolutely no issues with this play. There's going to be volatility. Like if Rose misses the cut, you kind of know what you're buying into at this point, but I like the upside that he presents.
I love it. I appreciate the feedback. All right, I got my back-to-back to wrap up my draft here. I'm certainly locked in on the first. I'm going to go with Nick Hardy. I just like the way Nick Hardy's been playing. His ball striking has been in really good form. He's got a top 5 at the Sanderson at the end of September, but since then it's tied for 44, 23rd, and 21. So he's consistently been bringing it, and he gets a lot of birdies, which I like in this tournament. He should, even if he maybe doesn't get a super high finish, I think I'll get enough points by his scoring with the birdies to cover. So I'm locked in there. With my next pick, I'm debating from a few guys. I just want to check one thing real quick before I make my final decision. All right, yeah, I'm gonna go with David Lipsky. He wasn't taken, right? Yeah, David Lipsky. Again, he's another guy who's just really, he's come on really strong. What's really been popping for him is his around the green game more recently, but his ball striking has been there. He's been pretty consistent. The biggest concern with Lipsky is that he's really hit or miss with the flat stick. If he finds a hot putter this week and makes a few putts, I think he has a lot of upside as well to win the tournament.
I want to just very quickly touch on the Nick Hardy play. So my model, I pull numbers to look at par or better streaks, and it takes a minimum of 2 rounds, and it's going to find and it's not the greatest statistic because when you play a difficult venue, all the players get wiped away on it. So we've gotten a lot of easy venues recently. So I think that there's like enough of a run that we can talk about. So number 1, Brian Harman, 19 consecutive rounds or par or better. And I'm just going to say this. I'm a little disappointed that nobody took Brian Harman in this draft. I kind of think he's going to win the tournament, which is kind of a gross thing to say when I don't have him. Nobody else took him. So that's unfortunate. Second on that list, though, in a tie, Nick Hardy and Hayden Buckley. And
in fairness, the guy I was deciding between with Lipsky was Buckley. I was like, do I go with Buckley or do I go with Lipsky? That's a good set to know. I appreciate that. All right, audience, you are back on the clock. You need to 8,600 is your limit. So we need to be strategic in making sure you get someone within budget. Looking at your options, maybe Pendrith, maybe Webb Simpson.
I doubled down on Webb Simpson.
Did you?
I want somebody to take him.
I was gonna say, are you really going back to? I know you love Webb Simpson, but at some point,
I don't like him as much this week. The one thing I will say about Webb Simpson, I think he fits that like Sahith Theegala narrative to where that he makes sense in GPP contests if you are shooting for the moon. I worry about what he's presented and put on the table recently, but it's a good course for him. I'm done at this point recommending Webb Simpson for contests until 2023, and that's a real like cop-out answer because this is probably our last show till 2023. But I don't know. I mean, it's a boom or bust play at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would agree. The lack of nominations from the audience right now is concerning to the point where I think we got to give you Smalley because it's like close enough with Jack and Steven. So as long as Smalley fits, yeah, Smalley it is. He was someone I considered. He was kind of on the back end of my roster, someone I was looking at, but someone at least I did put some thought into. I don't love him, but I don't hate it either.
I always say this, and I know we have one venue that's a par 72, but I always like Alex Smalley when you have a par 70 venue that reduces par 5 scoring. I have no issues with that play.
There you have it. How about you, David?
Yeah, I think that last week's performance was pretty eye-catching, gaining across the board and all strokes gained. And then previous to that, he was 11th at Bermuda. So, I like Alex Smalley as a player. He's still young, he's 26 years old. Like, he's still got quite a lot of future ahead of him. We don't fully know what he is yet. So I'm interested to see how the rest of his career progresses. It could be an interesting spot for him.
Amazing. I like it. I like it. Spencer, with your final pick, who are you taking?
So I saw David post this in Discord chat. I'm curious to get your answer on this, David, if you can elaborate just a little bit on it. So I am not taking this player. I have concerns because I agree with you. I don't think that this is the prototypical setup that you would want for him. The thing I will say to that is at $6,300, Dean Burmeister is way too cheap. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to burn your lineup and miss the cut. Do you want to elaborate on that very quickly of why you don't like him this week?
Yeah, I mean, look, we were obviously quite high on Dean Burmeister last week, and he burned all of us, which can happen at Houston. It is that kind of course where you can get into a bit of trouble, and he did have some penalty strokes out there. My concern with him would be that Dean Burmeister's biggest strength is his distance off the tee. Like, he is an incredible driver of the golf ball, and I want to find spots where I can put a golfer whose greatest assets are going to shine and going to be at the forefront. And this just simply isn't it. For me, he's better at these kind of courses where, he can take advantage of the driver. And we've seen him at various spots like that where he's performed very well. I highly, highly rate him as a golfer. I have no doubt that he will fit in just fine on the PGA Tour and will achieve a win in the next year or two. No doubts on that whatsoever. Agreed that his price has dropped way too much given basically just one performance last week. To take the volatility of 36 holes, like anything can happen in that sort of span. But yeah, I don't know if it's the right course fit for him. I'd rather see him at a longer course where he could use his driver a little bit more, especially considering 3 of those rounds are going to be on the par 70.
I would agree with that also. At the end of the day, he's 40th in my model. He is the 113th price player on DraftKings. That at least intrigues me, but I do think he has missed cut potential. And I think the other problem that comes into play with Burmeister, I kind of like Brian Stewart this week. If you can get him at half the ownership, I think that's a unique way to pivot off of the chalk that's Burmeister. But I'm going to go just as gross. Obviously, I'm down in the $6,000 range. I got to find somebody here. I'm going to take, and this is a chalky option at 6.4%, but I'm going to take Ryan Armour at $6,800. So if we take the 7 times Armour has played this event since 2014, and then we highlight how he's entered the tournament from his start before the RSM, we get this trend that shows bad form has equaled missed cuts and good performances have resulted in top 40 finishes at the track. I'm not a person that believes in trends, but in this particular situation, it does matter because it's a player that if you're telling me that if he has bad form, he plays badly at this course, and he has good form and he plays well, that means something. That's not a trend at that point. That's almost like historical data that's telling me he actually likes this course if he is in somewhat of good form. And we've seen him recently. He has multiple back-to-back top 30 finishes. Of the 3 times he's generated a top 55 finish at the tournament before Sea Island, he hasn't finished worse than 37th place at this event. You could argue that the birdie making potential is always going to be tapped or capped at some point because there's not going to be, I guess at the end of the day, you have fewer tap in birdies that come into play, but I don't know. I like him at this price. I think it's a boom or bust play, which unfortunately at 6.5%, that's not necessarily what you want to be talking about for a $6,000 golfer, but I don't know. If you told me that he came in 12th place, I certainly think that's in his range of outcomes. And I don't think 6.8% is that egregious when my model thinks he's 19th overall, and that's taking a lot of that weighted proximity plus putting. And it has him really well when I run this for upside, which is in fairness with a really condensed data set that fits his style. And, he has miscut equity that comes into play, but I'm almost willing to avoid or ignore the ownership in this particular spot, just because I think if he does hit, 6.8% is still low enough to where the rest of my lineup, it kind of all booms together.
I think that's fair enough. I like the play. I think for diving down for a value play, he's one of the guys that makes sense. And while 6.8% is high for him, it overall is not that high of an ownership where it should be. You definitely want to avoid 30% ownership on anyone, but at 6.8, I think he'll be okay. with that pick. David, how are you going to wrap up this draft?
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna end up leaving a bit of money on the table. I mean, I like Spence, quite liked the Brian Harman play. I was looking at like a route instead of if I hadn't taken Kevin Kisner, just because it was so obviously where Spence was going to go, and that was just the right thing to do from a game theory perspective. I would have gone Harman and then dived into that 6K kind of range as well. I really like the Brian Harman play, by the way, as well. I think that's great. I'm going to round out with the player that I would have was also considering other than Kevin Kisner, which is Troy Merritt. I really like that third place that we got from him last time out in Mexico, which, even though is different type of grass and different kind of environment down in Mexico, it is the kind of course as well where you can get into trouble off the tee if you're not driving it accurately. For Merritt, he is an incredible accurate driver of the golf ball, so he hasn't lost strokes on the field for accuracy since the Valero Texas Open in April of last year. So he is going to keep the ball in play for you. We can allude to the fact from there's not stroke gains data for the WWT, but we can basically take for a fact that being third, he was gaining on his ball striking in that tournament. I mean, he's got a great history here as well. So I mean, 23rd in 2019 at the RSM, and then 22nd last time out, and then the RBC Heritage. He's got some great form as well. He's got a 3rd, a 10th, and a 12th. That one last year when he was 12th was offered back as a 4th at the Valero Texas Open, which again, one of those courses where if you stray too far off, you can be in sort of desert wasteland kind of area. And yeah, you can miss a little bit, but if you miss a lot, then the penalty's incredibly high, and he's performed well at that track as well. So I like that correlation with good positive wind courses, and he's a good putter of the golf ball too.
There you have it. That is a wrap for the DraftCast tonight. I apologize for going a little bit long, but before we wrap up, feel free to let us know what lineup you think is going to win, whose team do you like the best. Report back. It won't be next week, but later in the year, we'll follow up on the winning team. Don't forget, give us a follow, hit the like button. It goes a long way. If you like the show, if you tune in every week, we know who you guys are. We're super appreciative. The audience, the fans, you guys make this show. We wouldn't be here doing this without you. So yeah, hit the like button, give us a follow if you can. But we're not done yet. We still have our first round leaders, which we hit on every single week. We'll start with David. David, who do you like in the first round leader record this week?
I haven't got access to any first round leader pricing this week, to be fair. So you might have to go to defer to Spence if he's been able to obtain anything, but I haven't had access to anything as of yet.
So there aren't any lines out yet. So we won't be able to give you the actual numbers. But if you want to give a few names of guys you might think are first round leader plays, and when the lines come out by tomorrow, some people you can follow or you might like, that would be helpful. But yeah, we won't be able to give any actual lines yet tonight.
Yeah, so what I'd say in terms of that is that I would be certainly favouring players on the Plantation course. It does tend to score a little bit lower than Seaside. You've also got extra par 5s on that one. And I am favouring a PM tee time as well at the moment. Bear in mind, though, it is a condensed field, right? Because they're starting on the two courses that there's from first tee time to last tee times only 2 hours. So the difference in terms of weather isn't going to be as significant as others, but I do prefer a later tee time. So I like Russell Knox, who's going off in the evening. Dylan Webb was someone that I considered who was part of my player pool, and Nick Hardy as well. So they would all fit that bill of going off in the afternoon and starting on the Plantation course.
I love it. I love it. How about you, Spence? Anyone that you might be targeting in the first round leader market? Obviously, we don't know the prices yet, but anyone that you might be looking for?
I'll give a couple players on the Plantation course. And I mean, I think unfortunately, most books are going to split up the pricing for it. So there is one book out there. I can give the book on here, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think so.
I've and not everybody has access to it, but I've seen Bet365, or at least at a certain time, Bet365 had first round leader prices available, and they were just jumbling everybody into one big group there. So, I mean, some of the Plantation guys that I like there, Justin Rose 60-1, Keith Mitchell 55-1, Kevin Kisner 66-1, Ryan Armour 125-1, and Adam Svensson 110 to 1. But I mean, I think unfortunately at the end of the day, none of that is really going to be that beneficial, because I think when FanDuel and DraftKings do post numbers tomorrow or tonight or whenever it comes out into space, I mean, you're going to have those prices chopped in half of what I just said. So, I don't know. I mean, I'll run some numbers and see. I'll post it in Discord if I find anything that I like. But it's unfortunately like one of those tournaments where they have found a way that we can't make first round leader bets on this show. They are trying everything in their power to stop losing money to us. And I guess congratulations to them for coming up with a strategy.
Yeah, they said they were going to start changing when they released the lines to after our show because we were getting too good at it. So they didn't want everyone to be able to play, which I totally understand. I mean, they're a business too. It's tough for everyone to be able to get those plays. So don't worry. If you pay $5.99, you get access to our Discord. You come in, we'll post the plays when the lines come out. You'll get them. You'll hit what we do every single week, and you'll be a lot richer. So it'll be a lot of fun. Just subscribe to Win Daily. It's pretty much a lock every week. Just to name a few guys I'm looking at for the first round meeting market, at least I'm excited to see what those lines come out to be. They're for sure going to be Hayden Buckley, Davis Riley. And there's, just comparing to the outright market, there's some guys that are pretty deep long shots that might be interesting to take a shot on, especially this week, considering the poorness of the field. Like, it's kind of like anyone can pop. So Brian Stewart is another guy I'll definitely have an eye on in the first round leader market as well. That's a wrap for tonight. We appreciate you tuning in. It might be a minute before we see you again. We will miss you, but we'll be back. We'll be back stronger than ever when the tournaments kick back off. Give us a follow on Twitter. We'll be posting things. We'll be around. Chat with us. Get into sign up for Win Daily for $5.99. Get into the Discord. You'll have access to get our outright plays as well. Did I forget anything?
Well, the one thing I'll add to that very quickly is books are pricing us out by not releasing numbers. Can you imagine a world that I get censored here to where Jason Day wins this tournament and then we don't do a show for like a month and a half after that point? That's going to be the ultimate. I think we might just need to come on and talk about Jason Day's victory if that happens. But no, I mean, from my end, good luck to everybody this week. I think Joel said it earlier. Be aware of this is a very weak field in comparison to what we usually get. Be aware of what ownership is out there. I think there's a lot of spots that you can pivot around this week. There's a few guys near the top that I like, but there's a lot of routes that you can go. I kind of really like this tournament, and I wish Finau still would have been in it because it even made it a better board. I still think this is a very good DFS contest week, even if DFS contests aren't being put out there like they should on DraftKings. But I like this tournament.
I love it. I mean, there is some gambling to me. By the way, I think about it is the tournaments like this, the edge is in the smart gambler more than anything, right? The guy who knows how to play the advantage with ownership and play the advantage with pricing and things like that, that you can find your bigger edge than normal. So that is a wrap for tonight.